Hi, we're Quaint and Curious Volumes. I am a newly shorn and utterly unfreaked out James, and I'm going to do the Mid-year Freakout tag. The great David Novak did this tag, Steve Danu did this tag, and insisted that everyone has to do it. So Steve said I had to. I started this channel because Mark at Book Time with Elvis said I had to. So I guess yeah, what can I do? I have no choice. Um, and here we go. The best book you've read so far in 2024. I have a fiction and a nonfiction choice. The first is Bleak House by Charles Dickens. Um, Probably familiar with Bleak House, at least know it's a long Victorian novel about a court case that kind of takes you through all different levels of English society in the 19th century. Um, the second, very different, but a nonfiction book, I guess it counts as nonfiction because it's based on science and politics. It is Nuclear War, a Scenario by Annie Jacobsen. It's a 2024 title. I don't read a lot of new releases, but this was one. I think I think I saw it on Steve's channel. I know I heard the author interviewed by Dan Carlin, and that spurred me to get a copy, and it hooked me from the very first page. This was actually it wasn't a page. I listened to it. I got it on Audible. So, um, but yeah, from the first minute, and I spent a couple of evenings just sitting in my chair when I would normally be physically reading text, just sitting there listening to it, jaw agape. Um, it, a story based on kind of the best current information she could get of what a nuclear war in present day America might look like. Fuel for nightmares, and it's it's led me down some rabbit holes. I think I'm going to read a few more books about nuclear war. Possibly, I've seen some. Anyway, yeah. Uh, we're only on the first tag. Okay, the first prompt. Second prompt. Best sequel you've read so far in 2024. Well, I haven't read any sequels unless you count. Yeah, here. Within a Budding Grove, the second volume of In Search of Lost Time. If you do, that's the best sequel I've read this year. I'm on track to have possibly the most pretentious mid-year freakout so far. With that, okay. And number three, new release you haven't read yet but want to. That is Percival Everett's James. His retelling or a variation on Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn, told from the point of view of the slave character Jim. I have a copy of it, and I am going to start. I think I'm going to start on it this week. Number four, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. That is Ink, I-N-K, the indelible J. Mayo Williams. J. Mayo Williams was an early record executive in the early days of the American recording industry. He was also an early star of the NFL, and so I'm looking forward to reading about the indelible J. Mayo Williams. The author is Clifford Murphy, who was my classmate. He was in my cohort at graduate school. He's a good friend of mine. He's been working on it for a long time, since we were grad students together. He's been working on this project, so I'm looking forward to reading that. That's coming out in July. The biggest disappointment, Carrie by Stephen King. Biggest disappointment. I don't know if it's the biggest. I wasn't expecting too much of it. Even Stephen King fans and people who like Carrie say it's not his best. It was his first novel. So it's so far the only Stephen King I've read. It didn't put me off him entirely. I'm going to give him another chance someday, but I wasn't that into it. The biggest surprise, number six, biggest surprise. Um, this is really going to be the most pretentious mid-year freakout ever. Henrik Ibsen's plays. I was not expecting these to be as exciting and electrifying as they were. I thought they would be kind of dour and austere and Scandinavian, but I found them to be weird and engrossing. I read those during what was it? Gable Pearl, the uh, the reading event that I invented in April. Okay, number seven, favorite new author. So that I would say Frank Herbert, author of Dune. I'd never read Dune before or any Frank Herbert. I read Dune for Dune in June, and I loved it from start to finish. It was a totally engrossing story, and well written, well paced. Uh, Really weird choices in some ways. I mean, the he doesn't overburden you with world building of the type that I usually get quite impatient with in science fiction and fantasy. Um, yeah, I will continue with that series for sure. Number eight, newest fictional crush. I don't know. I don't think I have a fictional crush. Or maybe Hepzibah Pynchon from House of the Seven Gables. Yeah, I don't know. Newest favorite character. That's prompt number nine. Newest favorite character. I have to say, for fiction, I'm going to say Maddie Ross from True Grit by Charles Portis. It's that whole book is told from her point of view, as a an old woman remembering an adventure that she had as I think she was 14, was it 12, 14, something like that. Um, and it's and her voice will stick with you if you give that book a chance. Um, I have a non-fiction favorite character that I've been thinking about for a few days, who is Arthur Ashe, the American tennis star. I read Levels of the Game over the weekend. John McPhee's book about a tennis match that Arthur Ashe played against Charles Gribner. I'll probably post a review or a response video to about that book because I found it totally engrossing. Um, Prompt number 10, book that made you cry. Usually this doesn't happen. I do have one. It is Blood Done Sign My Name by Timothy Tyson. Number 11, book that made you happy. I specifically remember reading parts of Bleak House and just feeling just incredibly pleased about just the writing, just delighted by it. Um, so, oddly enough, the book that made me happy that I specifically remember a moment of sitting there and feeling, yes, I'm very pleased to be reading this right now, is Bleak House by Charles Dickens. Um, Number 12, most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received. I went to a new thrift store here in town, and I found a signed first edition of Universal Harvester by John Darnielle. This is John Darnielle's second novel. Um, Signed there by him, Durham, 2017. The cover of this, it probably doesn't come across too well, but it's sort of got this wavy effect with this. I don't know what the optical term for it is, but it's slightly shiny and it looks like a television screen showing a static picture of a cornfield, and it's maybe a videotape that's sort of going wonky a bit, which does relate to the plot of the story. Um, so that's a pretty good thrift store find and a cool cover. Let's see. Um, Prompt 13, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? I don't need to read anything, but the things that I have specifically said I was going to read on this channel, from my very first video where I talked about 10 classics I'm going to read this year, I still have to read if I want to not be embarrassed. The Good Soldier by Ford Madox Ford, For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway, Portrait of a Lady by Henry James, and Orlando by Virginia Woolf. I also said I was going to read through In Search of Lost Time this year. I've read 2 volumes, so that leaves me with only 5 more, more volumes. I don't know if I'll get through all 5 this year. I know some people on YouTube are plotting to read In Search of Lost Time starting next year at a very slow pace. Yeah, good for them. I think it's a great idea. I will not join them because I'll be done by then, and I'll just drop into their channels and say and spoil what's going to happen next. Okay, I won't do that. I also said in a video that I was going to read Bright Balkan Morning, a book about weddings in Greek Macedonia. We'll see. Also, I kind of have a personal project where I read something by whoever won the Nobel Prize, and I'm also, like Mr. Bren Booth Jones, have kind of a back of my mind project of reading all the Nobel Prize winners, at least one book by each of them. So I have a Jan Fosse book that I've yet to read. It is called Trilogy. I did read about 20 pages of it. It is very Nordic, but at some point I want to finish reading Trilogy by Jan Fosse. So that's what I have for the rest of the year. It seems like plenty of reading. Yeah, I also am starting to think of another bound to be wildly successful reading project in November. I'll just throw it out there for any weirdos still watching. I was thinking of a project to read Chekhov in November. It has an obvious portmanteau title just sitting there, Chekhovember, and I have this copy, these selected short stories, translated by Pevier and Volkansky, and it has 30 short stories, so we could read 1 per day. And also, I have this copy, Anton Chekhov's 5 plays. Really, most people will say there's 4 major plays of Chekhov: The Seagull, Uncle Vanya, Three Sisters, and The Cherry Orchard. We read one of those per week. We read one of these per day. We've read most of the stuff that you're supposed to have read by Chekhov. Most of Chekhov's most celebrated works in the month of November. We could call it Chekhov November, or Chekhovember, or Anton November. No, it's not as good. Anyway, let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later. Bye. Oh, also, I guess it passes on. If you're still watching, now you have to do a Mid-year Freakout as well. Bye.